Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
So, a few hours ago, I saw the tweet about Elias Pettersson talking about Brock Besser and his contract, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've been talking to him all summer, and I told him I know he's going to figure it out, and if not, I'll just have to drive to Minnesota and pick him up myself." And so I thought, oh, I have a funny opportunity here, and so I quote tweeted it, and I said, "This is Brad and I trying to get Evan to show up, to leave the golf course and show up for podcasts." Not 2 hours later, Evan said, "Hey, I'm having a pet emergency, and I can't make it." And I went, well, one, now I feel like a jerk because it's his cat, his toothless cat. So fingers.
Speaking of toothless.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. It's a little Easter egg for the pre-show video. Yeah, so Evan's not here, but we did add something in his stead, which is some extremely bright lighting, but this is what studio lighting looks like. A little story, this lighting is from a listener who's been listening since day one. His name is Daniel Lighting. So this episode and the next is officially sponsored by Daniel Lighting. And he has a message for us. Lighting's landscape, lawn, and snow. We may not be the best, but we are definitely not the worst. Kenosha, Wisconsin. And if you like unfinished websites, go to www.leitings.com. www.lightings.com. Complete coincidence that Daniel Lightings sponsored the lightings on this episode.
My favorite is when we got the part about this also, when we got the message from him about this, and you kind of like directed me and Evan to read it. And so I went and read it after you and Evan had already started talking about it. And I was the only one who noticed that his last name was Lighting.
He even said, I didn't realize at first, and then I was hoping you wouldn't catch on. So as we're improving our setups, it's we've been kind of adding these things, and we thought we're going to wait on lighting until we have a permanent studio and update on that in a minute. And then we've been putting out videos, and then Daniel reached out and said, "Hey, love the content. Let's get that lighting figured out." So hopefully this episode looks a little bit better for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Yeah, about the studio. My significantly better half, who for reasons unbeknownst to me is still with me, is currently closing on a home. And a whole room of that home is going to be turned into the Winged Wheel Podcast studio. So within the next couple or a few months, we're going to have a permanent station set up for recording, both video and audio. We're going to be doing a lot of live streams. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff in there. We are going to be getting a custom table, decking it out. We're going to have to do a lot of painting. We're going to have to get Evan out to do a lot of painting. He's the tallest out of all of us. Vaulted ceilings and all.
I have a stepladder.
Yeah, so that's exciting news. And for those of you who want to say thank you to Mel. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. I'm Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
A lot has happened.
Everything has happened.
Yeah, we've been having discussions as to when to go to 2 a week. Our current plan is to make our first 2 a week the first week of October. You guys let us know what you think. If you want us to go to two a week sooner, we don't want to do it too early and then not have enough content. But then the hockey world's just like, no, we're going to make content out of nowhere. So quite a bit has happened, and we'll start with the Red Wings. The Red Wings won the prospect tournament.
Hey.
Which was very exciting. The last time we spoke about the prospect tournament, we were about halfway through. The good thing is all of our takeaways held true. Joe Veleno was absolutely lights out, scored 7 goals in that tournament.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I heard him passing. That's the Traverse City all-time goal record.
Oh, is it actually?
I think I heard that. He scored 7 goals in 4 games. How many other guys could have done that?
Philip Zadina had only assists, but he did still look really good.
He led the tournament in assists, did he not?
I believe so, or he was up there at the very least.
Yeah.
A lot of guys looked really good. There weren't too many Red Wings prospects where you're like, oh, they don't look good at all, or I'm pretty disappointed with their performance. Caden Fulcher, but that
he only played 1 game, didn't he?
Yeah, and you're talking about not the first goalie in Detroit's pipeline. That's all right. So yeah, they beat the Dallas Stars. Another comeback game. I believe they were down 3-1, 4-1,
4-2 in the third.
Yeah, and they ended up coming back to win that game. So that was big. That's the first time Detroit's won the prospect tournament since 2013, I believe. They had lost in the finals last year to Columbus. So
Detroit won everything in 2013. Calder Cup, Traverse City Tournament, a round in the playoffs. Last time that happened.
they were up 3-1 against the eventual Cup champs, which was nice.
So anyways, Traverse City champions.
Yeah.
Mo Sider.
Mo Sider. Oh,
Mo Sider.
that was a phenomenal showing by him. We have an interview with JD Burke later on, and he says a lot of good things about Mo Sider, and I'm glad because Sider genuinely looked fantastic. Like all of the questions about should Sider have been picked there, et cetera, we feel much more comfortable not worrying about those, knowing that Mo Sider is this good. Excellent tournament by him.
Hiroshi looked faster.
Hiroshi did. You could tell he's put in the work. A lot of the guys have stayed and put in the work. Cholowski did the same thing he did this summer that he did last summer, which was on his own dime, stay in Detroit to train with the team all season. You know, Svechnikov living with Larkin and working extra hard to get back after missing a year of hockey. Hiroshi working at it. Kufner had a good tournament.
He did. He was very one-dimensional in the tournament, but that's his dimension, so that's fine.
Yeah. And there are a lot of Kufner questions coming out, and we're going to kind of put a wet towel over that probably later on. I know people are kind of expecting Hiroshi stuff from Kufner, and I don't think that's... It's almost unreasonable to expect Hiroshi stuff of Hiroshi, let alone another player.
Yeah, and the fact they were signed at the same time is doing Kufner no favors.
No. Yeah, they're just genuinely a week full of positives, and that bled straight into training camp. The red and white game was today, kind of uneventful. Training camp didn't produce too much by way of excitement or notable stories. Mo Sider continued to look good. Besides that, it's kind of hard to glean too much from the red and white game. I mean, Justin Abdelkader looked good in the red and white game, so take from that what you will.
I don't believe you.
The one thing that I liked that they did in the red and white game was, because it's essentially a scrimmage, it was like 2 25-minute halves, so there's no periods. And anytime there was a penalty, they just took a penalty shot, but they allowed the defenseman to
chase. Yeah, that's pretty common for stuff like that.
I love that they do that, and it was hysterical because Jonathan Eriksson was the offender, and so they made him chase. I'm like, so
who was he chasing?
His name's Terry.
Oh, Chris Terry.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have laughed if it was like Athanasiu, Larkin, or Veleno.
Well, even Terry like took his time. He was going down at normal penalty shot speed, and he took a shot, and all of a sudden comes Eriksson like huffing through. I'm like, oh, buddy, it was kind of mean that they made him do it.
Yeah, they've been doing that for the skates that I've been doing lately, and I haven't got one of those penalty shots, and I'm almost relieved by it.
Because that'd be embarrassing if you got caught.
Oh yeah, I don't think I would be caught, but even the thought of it happening is horrifying.
Fun story. I played House League hockey in Windsor up until I was like, I can't remember what age, 9 or 10. I played for the Windsor Junior Spitfires for any local listeners, or Windsor local listeners. And then I eventually, I was trying out for a travel team, and I hadn't been playing travel growing up, and I lacked a lot of the skills that these kids did. And but I was fast. That's my biggest thing is I'm just fast. I can move fast as hell. And although maybe not now, I've put on some weight. And it was one of those plays. It was essentially like the two guys start in the corners and on your bellies, and there's a puck at center ice, and
I hated that.
You
drill.
get up and you race for the puck. And it was that kind of thing where it was like the best player that on our team, he was obviously going to make the team, and he was like a shootout specialist, was racing for the puck, and I just worked my ass off and beat him to it. I didn't score, but it reminded me of that, of just like hustling to get to the puck. And the coach told me, he was like, look, you're an outsider coming in, it's hard to break into this team, but that was the drill where I was like, yeah, you're going to make it. And that was awesome for me. And
that's fun.
The farthest I ever made it was AA hockey, so that was my glory days, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I've never been the fastest skater on any team I've played on outside of beer league. So
you're fast though.
Yeah, but considering where I played minor hockey, there were a lot of other kids in Kitchener, Ryan.
Oh yeah, Kitchener's another. I come from Windsor, and I thought that we were good at hockey, but Kitchener's legitimately like good at hockey.
Yeah, like a kid I played high school hockey with, got a cup of tea with the Blackhawks, and a kid I played in a summer development league with is currently the Winnipeg Jets second line center. So yeah, no, there were better players than me.
Who?
Brian Little.
Oh.
Played with him 2 or 3 years back when Conestoga College had an arena. There was a development league run out of there.
You're old, man.
Dude. He's currently on like a $33 million contract.
What's your contract?
right now, I'm not even sure if I'm going to make or get cut from the team I'm trying out for. So, which is technically considered semi-pro. So, my contract would be $0.
You get us that credibility, Brad. That's literally what your job is here.
It's far more likely I'm going to get cut, Ryan, right? You're aware of this?
You're not doing what I'm asking you to do.
I'm trying, man. My old legs can only carry me so far.
The biggest news out of the Red Wings training camp actually was not on the ice. It was off the ice, and it was we put out a quick YouTube video, a quick hit style video. By the way, you guys feel free to give us feedback on that. That was our first test with the new lighting, and then I just decided to make a video of it. Brad and I, and maybe even Evan, if we can convince him to one day, we're going to keep pumping those out. But that's not the only style of separate video we're going to be doing. I digress. The news came out that, according to Jeff Blashill, the Detroit Red Wings are going to be going with 4 alternate captains again this year. So it's going to be Larkin, Glendening, Abdelkader, and Franz Nielsen. Big surprise. Big surprise.
Dumb.
Okay. Here's the thing. I would have bet money on the fact that they were giving it to Larkin before the season. There was a whole movement, and I thought if they were even on the fence, especially considering how much the fan base has been screaming for it, and the fact that Nick Cronwall just retired and that would have been the only thing holding it back, I really thought they were going to do it. I didn't quite understand it. What's the holdup? And then Answer Khan then tweeted out the same thing that I can't remember who tweeted it before, but he added that Blashill talked to Yzerman. Blashill and Yzerman talked, and Yzerman wanted to get to know the team better before making that kind of decision. And also, they reserve the right to change their minds at any time. So by no means is it set in stone, which I think is important.
My plan could come to fruition still, Ryan.
Yes, it definitely could.
Yzerman's walking out to center ice a la Gordon Bombay with that C in his damn hand with the glue already on it, just ready to smack it on Charlie Conway's chest.
Here's the thing. Yzerman's not that dramatic, and that's the only thing that makes me think. Yzerman does not want that kind of fanfare.
No, he doesn't. But this is... How can something be smart and dumb at the same... make you feel more confident and less confident at the same time? I appreciate that Yzerman wants to get to know the team better. This is a good thing. Obviously, you don't want to come in and have him make rash decisions. He's obviously followed the team. He knows them well. So yeah, but he probably doesn't know them well enough. We, as Red Wings fans and anybody working in the organization, has dedicated so much time and attention to this team, even from an outside perspective. We know what's up, but we've been doing this for a decade more for most of the fans. But here's the concerning part. This was a collaboration decision between Yzerman and Blashill. So this is Blashill basically saying, I don't know the team well enough to overrule you. There is no other candidates than Dylan Larkin. There's not one, not a single one. How does Blashill not step in and go, listen, Steve, I get what you're saying, but this isn't a debate. And I seen the argument going around that some people were saying, well, yeah, we don't want to put Larkin in front of the media now because it's going to be a rough season. And he's going to be the guy who's going to have to step in front of the mic all year and explain why this team's bad. He's already the guy that's doing that.
Okay. Couple things. One, I don't necessarily believe that this was a decision between Blashill and Yzerman.
That's what I'm hoping, because that's very concerning if it's not.
Brad, your phone home button is capacitive touch.
Yep, I'm learning that now. Got it.
Oh boy, that'll be a treat for you too. I hope that caught on camera. That's in the frame. I don't genuinely believe this is a joint decision. I think all of this is coming down to Yzerman. I don't think Blashill has nearly the level of control that's being put out there publicly, but I also don't think that they're going to put it out there publicly that, this isn't Blashill's decision to make, because Yzerman has no interest in kind of cutting him off at the knees like that. Blashill's not on the hot seat. He's not in hot water, but I do believe that he is in a trial period where Yzerman's saying, well, as this team is rebuilding, that is a renewed opportunity for you to show me what you can do. He has a good reputation coming in, but the Red Wings haven't exactly had a pedigree for success. But Yzerman is smart enough to not hold that completely against Blashill because he hasn't had the personnel to even succeed, even if he could. Secondly, there was a captain that was named captain very young and put under enormous pressure while the team was underperforming.
Underperforming, you can say. They were historically bad.
And that team was the Detroit Red Wings, and that captain was Steve Yzerman. And it is no secret that took a toll on Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman was almost nearly not a Red Wing on multiple occasions because of that, and other things. He was almost traded a bunch of times. That sucked for him. He grew and he developed, and he was all the stronger for it, but that's not the ideal way to develop your best player. Yzerman's probably coming into this and thinking, look, this is going to take time. Just because we've been talking about it a lot since he came back does not mean time has passed. Literally 0 hockey time has passed. We're probably still 2 years away before Yzerman even starts to make big moves to turn the corner on this rebuild. He does not want to throw Larkin into the same thing that he had, especially considering the city's expectation for success right now just because Yzerman is back. And because the rebuild has taken so abhorrently long because previous administrations or previous personnel did not want to lean into the rebuild. I think genuinely a lot of this is colored by Yzerman not wanting to basically deflate the team's best player.
Not to ever disagree with Yzerman if that is his logic, but getting back to a point I made earlier, the C or an A on his chest doesn't matter. It's all going to come back to Larkin anyway. Who is the first guy the media runs to after the game? Larkin. Who is the player that all the fans focus their attention on when things are going good and or bad? Larkin. Who is the de facto leader of this team that probably all his teammates even look to him for? It's Larkin. The C is just the formality of it. So if they don't want to give him that formality in hopes that it lessens the burden, fine. But I don't see the logic. I would rather him learn when the team is awful like they are now, because this season we know they're going to be bad. But I think even the most pessimistic of Red Wings fans is going to have some level of expectation the following season. That's a season we've all kind of penciled as, okay, we might not be good that year, but we should be really turning a corner that year.
The needle should start moving.
Yeah, so you put the C on his jersey for that year. That's more pressure. It's easier to answer when the team's garbage and they're expected to be garbage than it is to answer if a team's underperforming when they're supposed to be at least decent. So I don't know. I don't love this decision from just about any angle. Even branching off that, I think the 4 assistant captains, but 2 of them rotate again is stupid. The only full-time assistants are Larkin and Abdelkader, and Blashill even said, well, they're going to wear the A every game. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, Abdelkader shouldn't be playing every game. So that's a whole nother issue that we're not going to get into. Yeah, I'm happy for Nielsen and Glendening to get an A. Like, I don't have any arguments there, but the rotation is dumb. You don't have a captain. Most teams have a captain and 3 assistants. Just roll the 4 assistants. Don't be dumb about it.
Are you allowed to have 4 A's on the ice?
I don't know if you're allowed to, but most teams have a C and 3 A's nowadays. So, like, if we're just counting overall letters here, give him A, B, C, and D for all I care.
Here's the thing. I'm of the same mind as you. I think Larkin is up for the task. Kid has a fire. He has a passion that is genuine. Like, he's the best player on Detroit, but it's not even only that. Like, that's not the only reason why people want him to be captain. The guy loves this team and he wants to win so badly. I think he's genuinely up for the task, and so I agree with you. But after Con tweeted that out and I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I understand where Yzerman's coming from. And the biggest point is, at the end of the day, Larkin will be captain, right? I was talking to Max about this, and Max said, it's not going to matter. Everyone knows. Like, it's very obvious that Larkin's going to be captain. Everyone's talking about it. Like, we all know that Larkin's going to be captain. And when it happens, it's not going to be, like, we're not going to care about the missed season or half season or however long that we thought it should happen sooner. Yeah, I would prefer it happen now, but it's almost a certainty that it's going to happen regardless. So,
Just to play devil's advocate, and I'm just bringing this up for conversation, so I'll preface it by saying I don't agree with this at all. But given that the Red Wings are an organization that generally tends to heavily favor veterans, do you think next summer's UFA crop factors into this? If they do, by miracle, land a Roman Josi, a Torrey Krug, guys who have been leaders in this league for longer than Larkin's even been in the league. Does that maybe weigh into it?
I don't think so. The only way I could have seen that being the case is if they brought in like an Erik Karlsson type, something to entice him to come. But I really don't, with the free agents on the market, I don't think captaincy will be what they're looking for. I think it'll be money. And, you know,
I'm not saying that the players are going to ask for that. I'm saying,
would they try to?
Would Blashill be more comfortable giving a C to a 30-year-old Roman Josi? It's not unprecedented for new guys to get letters or even a C on a new team.
And presumably, if someone like Roman Josi's coming in, it's on a 7-year deal, so you don't have to worry about longevity. You know what? I won't count it as likely, but I'm not going to discount that idea. And for those of you who go screaming about this, that's not a theory from Brad. It's a
no. I'm playing a hypothetical. I don't think that's the case. I don't like that idea if that's what they're doing, but
it's definitely possible.
It's worth noting.
Yeah. So
do this anymore. Keep talking.
Marissa on Twitter, her handle is I give Larks the C, and she's not going to be able to switch away from that. So Marissa, sorry. I wonder if she commented on Patreon. Actually, we'll see later.
It just means she gets to carry on the petition for another year, even longer. Ride the wave.
She's either going to have an extremely angry Patreon comment, or it's going to be just like no. It's just going to be the word no. Yeah. I felt that was legitimately one of my first thoughts was, oh, poor Marissa.
We bought a jersey for Clay.
Yeah. One of our jersey giveaways. By the way, guys, we're about 11 patrons away from our next jersey giveaway. You guys have reached these milestones so fast.
I think the next Patreon level, we're going to go like a stupid high number, but come up with like a stupid giveaway for that one or a stupid prize. We haven't thought that far, but I've got ideas.
I'm concerned.
You should be.
Yeah, the previous jersey giveaway winner was Clay, and he decided a Larkin jersey, and I was like, all right, do you want Larkin with the A or do you want Larkin with the C? And he chose Larkin with the C. Oops. Clay, it will be okay. And honestly, no, I don't think... Is that a jersey foul to wear that to a game now?
No, it's a form of protest that is against this awful team and their bad decisions.
That is. Fight against the man. Okay. Before we get into our Pacific Division preview in our interview with JD Burke, the floodgates have opened.
Kind of.
Signings have started to happen around the league. Now, this wasn't the first one, but it's the most notable one, and we're going to talk about it first. Mitch Marner. Brad, thankfully for you, it is the last time we have to talk about Mitch Marner for a little while.
Until the Leafs actually play the Red Wings.
So, pretty much the timeline on this was a few days ago, or four or 5 days ago, Bob McKenzie, Elliot Friedman, and a bunch of other people essentially confirmed the contract offers that Mitch Marner turned down, which included 7 years at $11 million per year, which in and of itself is a disgusting overpay.
I wouldn't say it's disgusting, but it's an overpay.
It's a hell of an overpay.
Slightly.
And,
I mean, the dude put up almost 100 points last year, Ryan.
That was a flip. That was the switch flipped in the Toronto fan base, where pretty much the last holdouts supporting Marner, like, the public opinion changed rapidly. And then all of a sudden we're hearing that talks are moving. And all of a sudden we're hearing that Marner himself wants to get this done. And all of a sudden we're hearing that Marner himself reached out to Dubas and instructed his camp to just get it done. And I was like, yeah, because I think you pushed it too far here, pal. Because that is a bad contract to turn down. As in, like, you should not be turning down that contract. And this is coming from someone who always advocates for the player. And then all of a sudden, Mitch Marner was signed. 6 years, 10.893.
So 6 years at $11 million.
That is still, in my mind, $1.5 million per year more than what Marner's worth at that length. Now, I think if you're going to overpay, you overpay your best players. Because if you overpay your middling players, your bottom end players, that's how you turn into the Red Wings or the Canucks. If you're going to overpay Mitch Marner. $1.5 million per year is a substantial overpay in my mind. Even if you want to call it $1 million per year, the way that negotiation was handled, I sure hope for Mitch Marner's sake he continues to play up to that contract. I love Mitch Marner. I think he's an incredible hockey player. I think he's one of the best wingers in this league, and I think he'll continue to be one of the best players in this league. But the way that whole thing was handled, it was just kind of a headache where even people who are fans of him like me, we're just saying, oh, come on, what is this? How are you asking for a Matthews comparable? Like, that's just not the case.
Apparently, when he stepped on the ice for training camp today, he got a big ovation.
Yeah, well, kudos, genuinely kudos to him for recognizing it when it was almost on the brink of going too far and stepping in and saying, okay, we're done.
Everybody was upset when he turned down 7 years, 11 million per. They're like, you're not going to get a better offer than that, a better deal than that. And then he got a better deal than that.
Yeah.
Because he got 11 mil essentially over 6 years. So now he's what, 22?
22.
So cool. He's getting his next contract at 28.
Yeah.
He's cashing out twice.
Yeah, but they do buy 2 UFA years.
And it's not a horrible deal for Toronto either, because they're getting 6 years. They're in their window now. Is Toronto concerned about this team 7 years from now? No, of course they're not, nor should they be. Right now, they have Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander. Their only objective should be to figure out how to win when they have Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Nylander.
Well, they have those guys locked. What they have to be concerned about is winning before Riley and Anderson and Muzzin and Barry need extensions.
Well, you just mentioned 2 out of the 3 defensemen who are up next year.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're in a world of trouble. But here's the thing. Again, it's a forward-driven league.
Yeah.
They've got a good goaltender on a good contract. And normally I'd say on any other team this wouldn't be an issue. But given that we're having Babcock as a coach might actually be a problem, is if you get down to crunch time in the playoffs, those are 4. You could put 2 of those guys on the top line, 2 of those guys on the second line, and basically never put the other lines on the ice if you really needed to. Could play them more than 18 minutes a game, but
Mike Babcock, he's not on a hot seat, but he needs to succeed this year. And if he doesn't, I think he's gone. If he does more of this, play the Marleau types 25 minutes and play Matthews for 18, he's gone, because they cannot be affording to waste these years anymore. Plain and simple.
When all the fire Babcock jokes went up when Matthews only played 18 minutes in Game 7, like I was like facetiously, I was loving it because obviously the way Babcock scorned Red Wings fans, even though he really didn't.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, so I was here for it and joking around with it, but I didn't actually take it seriously that he should be fired. But then I started thinking about it. This team has Austin Matthews, John Tavares, William Nylander, and Mitch Marner in their prime, Morgan Riley in his prime, Frederik Andersen in his prime. There's no excuse here.
No.
There's none. There's zero. I'm not saying they're as good as Tampa, but they're not far off.
No.
The only difference between them and Tampa is depth, but of everybody, if you play your cards right, the players I just listed off, minus the goaltenders, will be on the ice, one of them, for about 70 to 80% of the game. And that's when the game's going to be won. It's as much as we love to say, oh, the fourth line makes a difference, and the game is won in the trenches. Not anymore. It's not.
No,
it is not. Tampa was good because of Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, etc. The Blues won the cup because of O'Reilly, because of Pietrangelo, because of Tarasenko. Your stars win you cups. Toronto has no excuse. You could argue they have what? 3 of the 20 best players on the planet right now?
Yeah, 100%.
There's no way they shouldn't win, because this is the exact same garbage we were saying about Pittsburgh all these years. You have Crosby and Malkin. Every year you don't win is a travesty.
And it's true. It's true, because if you're that good, if you have 2 top-line centers, you are automatically a contending team in my mind. If you have 2 of the best centers in the world, you're automatically a contending team. The one year where people didn't realize this and they said, oh, Pittsburgh has no chance, they won the cup. And then they did it again with no defense. They had no serviceable defense. Like, a team of this caliber is a cup contending team. Anyone who says they're not is crazy, because just look at last year when St. Louis won. St. Louis was objectively not the best hockey team in the playoffs. They were just above the cutoff point for how good you need to be to win. And that wasn't 2 or 3 teams.
When it gets down to the playoffs, again, we all talk about how much we love parity in the NHL nowadays. So even though we're saying Toronto should be competing for the cup every year and, win a couple playoff series every year, there's not a huge separation between the Leafs and whatever team's going to finish 8th. So circling back to the point I was going to make about what you were saying, yeah, Babcock's got to be on the hot seat this year, because those little differences are what are going to win you the games in the playoffs. You play Matthews 24 minutes a game. You play Marner 24 minutes a game. You play Tavares 30 if you have to. You do what you need to do to win those games. And again, on paper, nobody should be beating them save for maybe Tampa. So, yeah, if they don't get out of the first round again this year, there's no excuse. None. Zero.
Some other signings. Before Marner, Josh Morrissey was extended for 8 years at $6.25 a year. He's 24. I like Josh Morrissey. I think he's a really good defenseman. I think the way the numbers crunch, he'd be more of a high-end second pair guy. But if he's going to continue to progress and get better, by all rights.
Gamble on the cap going up, and Morrissey's a safe gamble at that.
You can have a definitely worse defenseman at that price.
Yeah.
He would be the best defenseman on the Red Wings.
By a lot.
Ivan Provorov, another 6 year. He's 22, another 6 years at $6.75 a year.
That's a good contract. Again, calculated gamble.
Ivan Provorov is a guy where you're like, yeah, good player, just had a down year. But then you look at his numbers and you're like, well, a lot. And this is part of where you really need to be well versed in analytics before you can start drawing too many conclusions from it. So I'm not going to declare that this is a bad deal. By no means. I would again, Ivan Provorov would be by far the best defenseman on the Red Wings.
Hopefully, Phil Perona prevents us from saying that in a year.
Yeah, but they pretty much really have to hope that last year was just a very down year for him. Otherwise, that might not look so great. But again, the cap is going to rise, and he's 22.
And the season before this, he was tied for the league leading goals amongst defensemen.
Something like that.
So the talent's there. There's no question. It's just, is it because of Philly or is it because of Ivan?
Jared Spurgeon, who I believe will be 30 pretty soon, got a 7-year extension at $7.575 a year.
I like Jared Spurgeon a lot. Definitely a candidate for most underrated player in the NHL. That contract is insane.
Yeah, you cannot be giving a 30-year-old 7 years at over 7.5 a year, especially because his contributions are more defensive. And everyone knows how much I value the defensive part of the game and how much I love strong defensive defensemen.
He's good offensively too,
but he's 30. You're going to be paying.
I think.
Yeah, you're going to be paying him until he's 36 or 37.
Because he's not this contract doesn't kick in until next summer.
Yes. So you have to hope that he ages very gracefully.
And I'm not even going to go so far as to say you never give a 29-year-old a contract like this. I'm going to say that this is under the context that it's the Minnesota Wild giving him this contract. Are they the least self-aware team in the league? They are doing everything in their power to tread water. This is not a roster that is even close for contending for a cup. I admit, I think they'll be a lot better this year than people are giving them credit for. I think based on the Vegas over-under point spreads, they're one of the better bets to pick the over on. But they're probably not going to make the playoffs still because that division's loaded. And this entire team, they're going to have like $40 million tied up in 3 or 4 players who are going to be,
and we're not talking about the Leafs.
Yeah, and they're going to be all going to be like 33 or older between Suter, Parise, Spurgeon, and Zuccarello.
Oh, the Zook contract is bad.
Like that's going to be over $30 million, and they're all on the books for like 7 more years. And Jared Spurgeon is the youngest of them.
Sometimes I feel like time passes too quickly, and then I realize that we're only halfway through the Suter and Parise contracts, and I'm like, no, we have a lot of time before we die. They're going to be those contracts are going to be with them forever.
The Minnesota Wild are doing what the Red Wings did 4 years ago, except they are doubling down on it when Detroit, after a few years, went, okay, enough of this. As soon as they missed the playoffs, Holland just went, yeah, all right, we're going the other direction now. Minnesota's like, yeah, we just missed the playoffs. Quick, let's sign all the old guys for even longer and more money to maybe get back to the playoffs. That's the sad part. Maybe get back to the playoffs next year. They might miss the playoffs this year. Imagine having all these guys at like 30 to 32 years old missing the playoffs and then realizing, oh boy, we have no cap room and all these guys for over half a decade still.
The next contract I want to talk about pisses me off.
Oh, it's Charlie McAvoy, isn't
Charlie
it?
McAvoy, 3 years at $4.9 million. How does Boston keep doing it? I am convinced they are kidnapping players' families and holding baseball bats to their shins.
No, what happened here is Don Sweeney sent Jarmo Kekalainen a real nice fruit basket filled with anything he wanted because Werenski signed first on a damn near identical contract.
Yeah, I would much rather have Charlie McAvoy on that contract, though, yeah?
There's not a huge difference between them. I think McAvoy's the safer bet. I still think Werenski's got some room to grow, whereas McAvoy, for the most part, is what he is.
I'm going to have to dive into the numbers on those guys because I have a feeling that
Werenski's underlying numbers aren't great, but when you look at some of his defensive partners, it makes sense. Meanwhile, McAvoy's had Chara.
Boston's not completely immaculate in terms of contracts. They are paying David Backes for 2 more seasons at $6 million a year, essentially just to healthy scratch him. But they have Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak and Patrice Bergeron and Charlie McAvoy and
24-ish?
Torrey Krug, all for under $7 million. All for under $7 million. Some of them are under $6 million.
Some of them are under $5 million.
That is a phenomenally efficient team in terms of contract value. With you look at the amount of production they're getting that overvalues the amount that they're paying for it. I worded that terribly. They contract good, hockey players even better, is the gist of it. You can never count out the Boston Bruins so long as they keep signing amazing deals like this. That is absolutely nuts. It makes me so angry as a fan of a team that is hampered by so many contracts where they're like, yeah, we're overpaying David Backes. It's like $6 million, but we have Patrice Bergeron at 6.875. We have David Pastrnak at 6.67. Brad Marchand at 6.125. Yeah, Torrey Krug at 5.25 and Charlie McAvoy at 4.9.
Here's the reason I love the McAvoy contract. Ignoring how we objectively dislike the Bruins, but just from a pure hockey brilliant standpoint, here's why I love the Werenski and the McAvoy contracts. More so for McAvoy because Boston's really in their window right now. Obviously, you're getting 3 more years at McAvoy of incredible value in a window where you should be competing for the cup, and yes. Boston will be. And the downside that people will immediately point out is, well, yeah, but he's going to be a UFA at 25, and you're going to have to pay him out the ass. Well, yeah, but the max you can sign him to is 8 years. So you're telling me that I'm going to have to probably overpay by $1 or $2 million a year for Charlie McAvoy, but then we get to punt him to the sun if we need to at age 33? It's ideal. Perfect. This is the perfect structure. And then if he's still capable, you can give him a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contract just to keep him on board. He'll be 32, or 33, so you don't have to pay him too much because that's how the market works. Old guys don't get that much, unless you're going to Minnesota. It's brilliant. Again, just like we were talking about Toronto, overpay the stars.
If you're going to overpay the stars.
What will Charlie McAvoy be worth at the end of this contract? Objectively, probably $8 to $9 million a year. He's probably going to ask for 10, 11. And if you have to give him 10, 11 for 8 years, fine. Nobody's unhappy there. McAvoy's getting his payday. You get to keep a top pairing defenseman. Yeah, you overpay him by $1 million or $2 million, but guess what? That's why you sign bargain bottom 6 player deals and you have ELCs.
It also makes it easier when they've underpaid literally all of their stars at this point.
Yeah, they're the one exception. People are making fun of the Leafs right now. Oh my God, they got over $40 million tied up in 4 players. Well, yeah,
but how you have to do it.
This is how you do it.
Or, again, you kidnap players' families like Boston has done.
Or you can overpay Darren Helm, Justin Abdelkader, Jonathan Ericsson, because that strategy has worked so well. No, you got to find, and we joke about it as Red Wings fans all the time. AHL players can replace any of the Red Wings I just mentioned, and they make $700,000 a year. So if we had to overpay Larkin and Athanasiou and Mantha each by $1 million or $2 million a year, cool. All that money is saved if Ericsson, Abdelkader, and Helm aren't overpaid and we have AHL guys being paraded out. It's all about balance. A true superstar or even a true star player makes a difference in your roster. Downgrading from a pretty decent third-line winger to an all-right fourth-line winger doesn't impact your cup chances all that much.
All right, I'm going to move us along. We're going to start our Pacific Division preview now, and we're going to start that out with an interview with JD Burke. This is our first time having JD on the show. A lot of you might know him as the one, and we're going to talk about this in the interview. He does have some ties to Red Wings news. He's the first person who broke Detroit's interest in drafting Moritz Seider. JD is aware of many hats, editor-in-chief at Elite Prospects, especially EP Rinkside, a resource that a lot of us use, co-host of TSN 1040, and of course a contributor over at The Athletic Vancouver. So enjoy this excellent interview with the brilliant hockey mind in JD Burke. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast's very special interview with first-time guest, one that we're very excited about, JD Burke. JD, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me on the program.
And I just realized that I gave you no credentials there. So JD, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure plenty of you do, is the editor-in-chief over at Elite Prospects, a resource that legitimately everyone in the hockey world uses. He is also a contributor for The Athletic Vancouver, and then contributor / co-host of Rink-Wide TSN 1040, according to your Twitter bio. So you're a man of many trades, JD.
Yeah, no kidding. I wear many hats.
Yeah.
As one has to nowadays to get by in the media world, and the most recent of those to make its way onto my head is the Elite Prospects Rinkside editor-in-chief, and we just got renewed at TSN 1040 for another year of Rink-Wide radio. So it's an exciting time. I mean, training camp is just starting. Hockey season isn't that far around the corner. It's definitely an exciting time, particularly in Vancouver, where for the first time in 5 years, the team isn't expected to be at or near the bottom of the standings. So I can't wait to get started, and looking forward to talking hockey with you guys.
Yeah, of course. Well, congratulations on all of that. And let's start with Vancouver, because I think a lot of the hockey world was surprised by kind of the moves that were made. The biggest, I guess, would you say the biggest story was the whole Tyler Myers moving to Vancouver, which was kind of projected from the beginning? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
The Tyler Myers contract, so I'm not going to mince words here, it came under heavy criticism from us included. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that the Canucks, they have a bit of a tendency to do what is, directly in front of them. And in the case of their right side defense, the obvious solution was to sign Tyler Myers to that contract, and that's precisely what they did. And for better or worse, that's kind of how they've operated. I mean, they needed a bottom six checking center last year, so they didn't search the secondary market. They went after the biggest name that fit the description in Jay Beagle. And it's just kind of the way that this team has operated under Jim Benning's stewardship since he joined them. So I wasn't necessarily surprised. I think that definitely, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but it's certainly not a contract that I would have signed myself. He's a low-end second-pair defenseman, right? Like a number 4 or 5. And they're paying him close to top-pair money. And it's safe to wonder whether they're going to deploy him accordingly as well, especially given, the investment that they made in him this summer. I mean, it's not ideal, but I think that the thing to keep in mind here is that Jim Benning isn't he doesn't have any real latitude here. He has to make the playoffs this season, or his job security is in question, and everybody knows the score. Right. So, I mean, it's not the move I would have made personally, but I can just see Jim Benning looking at this team, looking at the bright side of his blue line and going, Troy Stetcher is a good, useful player, somebody who is a low-end first pairing guy, maybe a good second pairing guy. I've got Chris Tanev, who's reliable for about 30 to 40 games a season. And then what? And I think when you try to answer that question without Tyler Myers in the fold, things get complicated. I think that the addition of Jordy Ben was a savvy move to that end because of the fact that he can play both sides. And I certainly think that's going to help things, especially when injuries rear their ugly head, as they always do. But beyond that, it's a grim picture. And even in the prospect pool, there's nobody who's really suited to playing on that part of the ice. So, I mean, they were in a tough spot. They did what they had to, and in their mind, that was signing Tyler Myers. And I guess we're going to see how that works out, because they might be able to manage his $6 million cap hit in year one, maybe in year two. But if Jim Benning's around to see years 3 through 6, that's when it could really start to get a bit grim.
Now, I'm glad you actually mentioned years 3 through 6, because obviously when Benning got his extension this summer, it was met with a bit of ridicule from the general public. But given that the Aquilinis have been very forthright in they want the team to win now, they're not in it for a long-term rebuild. With that caveat in mind, how do you think overall Jim Benning has done with his, for lack of better words, hands tied?
Well, I don't think that we should let him off the hook either, right? I think that it's worth acknowledging the context in which he arrived at this job and what he's had to do to keep it. But the simple fact is, like, this was Jim Benning's plan. He wanted to build a team that would contend and compete on the fly without tearing it down to brass tacks. And that was his plan, of his volition. And I think that even if you look at what Jim Benning did under the context of somebody who was having his arm twisted in one direction, I don't think any of the moves he's made have necessarily worked out. I mean, it's one thing to question the team's direction, and I think that I have, and I think a lot of people have, frankly. But if you looked at this team when Jim Benning took over, and the mandate from ownership was to contend and be in the chase for the playoffs year after year, well, I think there's a worthwhile argument, of course, to be made over where it was ever possible. But if your perception of chasing that end meant that you were going to trade for Brandon Sutter and give him the first retroactive no trade clause in NHL history, or trading for Eric Goodbranson, then I'm not going to be overly sympathetic given those factors, because, I mean, both of those moves are absolute disasters. And right now you look at the Vancouver Canucks, and they got a bottom six that was outscored 2-1 last year, with two centers that are making a combined $7.5 million. So, I mean, yes, it's worthwhile context, sure. And I don't begrudge Jim Benning for saying enthusiastically behind the scenes and in front of the camera that he was for the rebuild on the fly. I mean, I would do or say just about anything myself to get the job, and I appreciate that. There are only so many of them in the NHL. However, his moves were not the most effective ones, and the short-term results weren't great, and long-term we're starting to see them bite the Canucks in the rear end. So as for the extension, I think that's just optics. That's kind of how the Aquilinis operate, right? Before Jim Benning came to town, they would fire a general manager after 1 year of missing the playoffs. And that's just how they operated. They were not a patient group. And they developed a reputation around the league. And nobody wanted to work with them because of their impatience. Well, I think that now they've kind of overcorrected themselves, and in response to that criticism are showing unyielding patience in the face of grim results. And you see things like Jim Benning's contract extension as proof positive of just that. And I think that what happened this summer was there was a lot of talk about Jim Benning making these moves. We talk about the Tyler Myers contract. We can talk about the JT Miller trade. A lot of people painted him with the brush that he made those moves with making the playoffs in mind, with trying to save his job in mind, that he was a lame duck GM. And he had to wear that. He had to wear that on every decision that he made. Well, it's a bit late now, but they've gone ahead and rectified that by giving him a contract extension. But everybody you talk to has said the same thing. If this team doesn't make the playoffs, extension or not, that might be it. It doesn't look like it's good. It's going to be enough to keep Jim Benning bountifully employed. So there's a lot of optics there, I think, and no real substance. I think nothing changes about Jim Benning's future.
Throughout all of that, I think there was parts of it where a lot of Red Wings fans were sitting wherever they're listening to this podcast and nodding with you, JD, because I think there's a lot of parallels there to what Detroit kind of went through the Ken Holland era, or at least the latter phases of the Ken Holland era. So to stray away a little bit from the negatives, or at least the complete parallels to what Detroit was going through, I think one of the biggest differences in the potential rebuild or rebound of either team would be the fact that Vancouver has a true bona fide superstar in Elias Pettersson. How does that change all that kind of gray, mucky, crappy rebuild stuff we were talking about? How much does Elias Pettersson move the needle and actually make up for the deficiencies that Jim Benning's moves have brought to the table?
Well, I think that it helps. It helps paper over a lot of the losing. It helps paper over a lot of the mistakes that this front office has made in the top 10 of the draft. I mean, we can talk about how excited this fan base is for Quinn Hughes, how excited they are for Elias Pettersson. The other reality is that Olli Juolevi has not played a single NHL game. One of the few people from his first-round pick class that hasn't. Jake Virtanen is never going to live up to being drafted 6th overall. But, you know, if you hit a home run like Elias Pettersson and you follow that up by taking Quinn Hughes, I mean, it's possible that the Canucks could have gotten 2 of the best players from their draft classes in back-to-back years. And when you do that, it's pretty hard to not win a Stanley Cup. It really is. Like, you look at historically, this is a point that Thomas Drance made for the Athletic Vancouver. If you can add the best player from consecutive drafts, it's really hard to not win a Stanley Cup. So I think people are excited. I think they have reason to be, certainly, when you look at some of the players that are on the way. And I think Elias Pettersson kind of gives the city a newfound sense of optimism and hope. I think that there are some worthwhile questions about whether he can repeat what he did last year. He did have some elevated percentages, and to just ignore that would be, I wouldn't be doing anybody any favors if I did that, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he responds with an NHL that's ready for him this year. Luckily, the Canucks have added some interesting pieces around him, but I think that he has had a really profound effect on the PR of this team, and hopefully we'll see what type of effect he has on the long-term competitiveness of this team. He's a hell of a player, and I think that he just might be the best one to come out of that draft class.
So we're buried in the Eastern time zone here, right in the middle of Leafland. So when it comes to RFAs, all we've heard about over the last, year is Mitch Marner. But Vancouver's sitting on a pretty significant RFA who is still currently unsigned. What is going to come of the Brock Besser saga in Vancouver right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think there's a lot of dynamics at play here, and a lot of people are going to want to paint this with the brush of, he's just another RFA waiting for the Mitch Marner news to drop, right? Because that's expected to reset the market on what a winger's value is at the NHL level. But he's such a different class of player, and I don't mean that as like a compliment. I don't mean that as a knock. It's just the reality of where they stand in the current collective bargaining agreement. I mean, Mitch Marner is an RFA. He can sign an offer sheet, and he has the December 1st deadline, where if he doesn't sign, he's done for the year. Brock Besser can't sign an offer sheet, and he doesn't have the December 1st deadline. In fact, according to the NHL, he practically isn't a free agent because he has no bargaining power because he's the 10.2 designation. And that's worthwhile context because he's a player without much leverage, and I think the Canucks are aware of that. And because of the lack of diligence on some of their other contracts, which we'd mentioned prior, they now find themselves in a position where they don't have the money to lock up Brock Besser long term. And you're looking at a scenario, well, here we are. And if the Canucks want to sign Besser short term, 3 years, and at that point, he's going to want a backdiving or an elevated third year so that he can get a good qualifying offer. He'll be arbitration eligible, and he'll be 2 years away from being walked into unrestricted free agency. And so I think the team has been desperate to maintain a scenario where they get him signed to a long-term deal. There was a report today from TSN 1040's Matt Sakaris that The Canucks offered Besser a 7-year deal at $7 million per, that his camp rejected at the time of the draft. So it's really quite interesting to see how this plays out, because I don't think the Canucks anticipated it would be this difficult with Brock Besser. And they're just in a situation now where they're out of money, and the most they can offer realistically is $7 million per. And if that's not going to do it long term, then they have to completely rework this negotiation, because, well, I mean, $7 million per on a 3-year deal that will effectively walk him to unrestricted free agency isn't going to do the club much in the way of benefits either. So I don't know how this ends, but the one thing to keep in mind is that negotiations like the one that Brock Besser is currently mired in, it's pretty commonplace for 10.2 CBA designations. The two most high-profile ones that we've encountered to date would be Torrey Krug and Johnny Gaudreau. This is another example that Thomas Strantz pointed out in his article. I can't take credit for this one. They both missed games. They didn't miss a lot of them, but they both missed playing time. So it wouldn't be irregular for Brock Besser to miss time as a result of this negotiation. I just hope, and I'm sure Brock Besser hopes as well, that it's not a significant amount of time, because this was his first summer to really get a full exercise regimen in, unimpeded by injury, and to kind of have that messed with because he's not here at training camp would be unfortunate after 2 summers where he spent nursing injuries and worrying about where he's going to play the next year, whether it's Utica or Vancouver. This offseason had the opportunity to be a real big force for good, and unfortunately, just the way that this negotiation has gone down, it's looking like another kind of delayed start to his season is about to rear its ugly head.
So to transition us to more broad Pacific Division talk, something that we like to do, JD, is completely pigeonhole ourselves and make all too early standings predictions, as well as identify a dark horse team that you think could overachieve and then a team who won't live up to expectations. So because you've been so kind as to give us your time, we are going to make you jump into that pigeonhole with us. So off the top of your head, what 2 teams in the Pacific, or identify one of the next 2 criteria: a team that's going to overachieve, or that's a dark horse team to succeed, and a team that is going to underachieve and not live up to expectations.
So I think that one team that has the potential to catch some people off guard is the Anaheim Ducks. And that's not a very popular choice, I'm sure. But here are the facts to consider. They've got one of the best defense cores in the NHL with Josh Manson and Hampus Lindholm. They got one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, and John Gibson, who, I mean, he might be the best goaltender in the NHL. And the Randy Carlyle effect is gone. And they've got a couple of really talented youngsters who are going to be entering this lineup. And I think that the Anaheim Ducks are in a really good situation long term. I know that's not a popular take, but you look at their prospects, you look at the fact that getting Randy Carlyle out of there alone is going to have a very profoundly positive impact. This team could catch some people off guard, I think. I really believe that. And so much is going to, rely on whether they can get John Gibson healthy for an entire season. That's going to be a huge factor. But, I mean, look, if Sam Steele, Max Jones, Maxime Comtois, if all of these guys are in the NHL, I can't forget Troy Terry either. I mean, that's a big-time injection of skill and speed and talent into the lineup that I don't think anybody has really accounted for, because the NHL sample just isn't there yet that they can. So I think they're a team that could make some noise here. I really, really do. On the other end of that scale, I think one team that could be primed to perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, take a step back is going to be the San Jose Sharks. And I mean, it's this simple. They lost Joe Pavelski. I mean, that's a big loss. I mean, not just on the ice and trying to replace the 35 to 40 goals that he would chip in annually like clockwork, but off the ice as well. I mean, he was that team's leader, and I don't think they did a lot to replace that this offseason. I think they're going to get some young talent into that lineup as well. I think that Chekovich is going to be an interesting one to follow. He's a real high risk, high reward type of prospect, and I know that the Sharks are going to give him every opportunity to succeed. And if his sample at the end of last year in the AHL is any indication, he should be lights out. But I mean, it's a tough division that's getting better all around them, and I don't know if they have enough defensive depth past the first two pairs or enough forward depth to make up for the loss of Pavelski to keep pace. I don't think they're going to be necessarily bad. I'm not saying that. I just think they could take a step back.
So, with that in mind now, if we had to put you on the spot and you had to put the Pacific Division in your order of how you think they'll finish 1 to 8, what does that look like to you?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I think that the best team is going to be the Vegas Golden Knights this year, followed by the Calgary Flames, followed by the Sharks, followed by the Arizona Coyotes, followed by the Canucks, followed by the Ducks. And the Oilers will be behind the Ducks, and in last place you've got the Kings, who are just going to be one of the least talented teams in the NHL by a significant margin.
I was going to say, how is JD going to phrase this gracefully? And you did as gracefully as you possibly could with that roster.
Yeah, they got some tough times in front of them in LA. And look, they have the second best prospect pool in the NHL, according to the good people that I work with at EP Rinkside. That's where we had them designated this year. So I think that they've got the stuff to turn this thing around in 2-3 years perhaps, but not right now. They're in for some real short-term pain. But, I mean, getting Alex Turcotte was huge. So we'll see how this turns out long-term, but I'm not expecting much, if anything, this year.
So for Red Wings fans who are listening, JD actually has a claim to fame that is extremely relevant. And for those of you who haven't connected the dots yet, JD was the first and only person to put the news out there that Detroit was considering Moritz Seider at pick 6, which obviously did come to fruition. I know, JD, we talked about it, and there's only so much you can say to protect your sources. But walk us through a little bit about what it was like to hear that news and then kind of the immediate backlash that you took when you put it out there.
Well, I think that, you know what, like the Vancouver Canucks fan base, it doesn't get much crazier than that. So I don't think anybody was too hostile from the Red Wings perspective when I put out the news that the Red Wings wanted to move down, because they coveted Moritz Seider but weren't especially thrilled with the proposition of the value in front of them at the number 6 selection. And I found that out because one of the teams that they spoke to was the Vancouver Canucks. And, you know, I'm talking to scouts, trying to figure out what's going on at the draft. And I started hearing rumblings that this team is legitimately considering trading up to take that 6th overall pick from Detroit, and that Detroit wanted to move down so they could take Seider. And I reported as much on my Twitter feed. There were a lot of Red Wing fans who just didn't want to believe it and made a lot of very quirky comments to that exact end. And
both of us included, to be completely transparent.
Yeah, fair. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fair shit. I mean, like, I've seen the Canucks make their fair share of questionable selections in the top 10, and certainly I understand where Red Wings fans are coming from with that one. It's not the pick I would have made. I had Seider closer to 20 on the final EP rankings, EP Rinkside rankings, than I did at 5. So bit of a value canyon there, I suppose. But it's. I just hope that Red Wings fans are fair to Seider, who is an exceptional human being, comes from a great working class background. Like, this kid was born to play for the Detroit Red Wings. He comes from a blue collar working class family, extremely humble, extremely hard worker, doesn't take himself too seriously. I think that the city if they just forget about where he was drafted, is going to fall in love with this kid. And there's been a lot of reports to that end coming out of prospect camps, and I think Traverse City. So, I mean, would I have taken him there? Absolutely not. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But I still think he has the potential, the ability to be somebody who turns into a top 4 defender on the right side. So I have some questions about his offensive upside. I haven't seen enough at present to project him as an offensive contributor at the NHL level. And I have some other concerns. Mitch Brown pointed this out to me when we were doing some of our discussions and meetings ahead of last draft, but he really struggles handling the puck on his backhand. And now that I've told you that, you won't be able to unnotice it when you watch him play. It's really quite something to see, and once it's pointed out to you. So, I mean, like, it's a tough spot for the kid to be in, but I think that he's got the maturity to handle it, and I'm pulling for him. I hope he does well, because he's the type of guy you want to see succeed.
If it does help placate your fears, JD, the moment he was drafted, Brad and I both had some pretty colorful reactions, and none of it was directed towards Moritz Seider. And both we and the entire fan base have rallied behind the kid. The immediate reaction was, well, this is a surprise. We might not love the pick, but we are now all Moritz Seider fans. And he has not only won the adoration of the fans, he's actually played extremely well and has been very promising. So we can see a lot of the upside that the Red Wings management saw in him. The fan base is kind of surprisingly doing a good job of letting go of where he was drafted and not worrying so much about Zegras or whoever else they could have had. You are a prospects expert, so we do want to chat with you a little bit about some prospects pertinent to the Red Wings. Without rubbing Quinn Hughes too much in our faces, tell us a little bit about what it was like for Vancouver to acquire Quinn Hughes, and then similarly what you make of Filip Zadina and Joe Veleno from the same draft.
Well, it took a lot of good luck for Quinn Hughes to be there, and the Vancouver Canucks have been on the receiving end of players being available to them much lower than they had them ranked on a few occasions, and that was just the greatest one of all. I think they had him ranked in the top 3 that year and managed to get him at 7. And you know what? I wouldn't be too upset if I were a Red Wings fan. I think Filip Zadina would have been the consensus pick where they grabbed him, which was one spot before the Canucks. And you know what? The Canucks would have had a tough decision if Zadina and Hughes were around. So you know what? It's like, it would be fun to rub that in your faces, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I think that you guys got a hell of a player in Zadina. I think that similarly, Quinn Hughes is going to suit the Canucks' needs a lot better than a Filip Zadina would, so that worked out for everybody. And an interesting thing to follow here is the fact that, you know, the Canucks just haven't had a prospect that profiles like a Quinn Hughes ever, period. They have never had an offensive defenseman with his pedigree, with his talent level, with his skill. I mean, it's an exciting thing for Canucks fans to see. And I think that the only thing people are waiting for now is to see what he can do in an extended sample, because last year we got to see what Quinn Hughes could do in this lineup for 5 games. He made some absolutely electric plays. He's a fantastic puck carrier. Doesn't matter that he's a bit smaller. He's still a battler. He competes hard for loose pucks, does everything you'd expect of a defenseman 4 inches taller. He's a hell of a player, a hell of a talent, and I'm exceedingly lucky to get to follow his career here in Vancouver.
Now, one very quick last question, looking forward to next year's draft. Lafreniere has been the consensus #1 pick for some time now, but there are a few other players that have been rising up, maybe even challenging Lafreniere's spot, depending on who you talk to. What do you make of next year's top-end crop? So they're Tier 1 or Tier 1A and B, and how does that compare to perhaps this past draft or the one before?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of making proclamations this far out. I see people putting out their draft boards, and I've got a great deal of respect for that and all the people who do it, but it's too early for me. What I can say right now is I think that there are going to be legitimate challengers for that top spot from Alex Lafreniere. I think that his footwork, his skating could become an issue. It could create an opening, and you know, I for one, I've got Quentin Byfield right up there with him. We'll see whether that lasts for the entirety of the season. There are some very interesting prospects in that top 10. There's some very enticing prospects in that top 10. But I mean, the example I always fall back on is the fact that nobody had Miro Heiskanen even in the first round of their draft to start the year. And then he was a number 3 overall pick. So, I mean, with that example, it's way too early for me to compare this draft to any draft of years past. But I just feel comfortable at present saying that there is some immense talent in the top 10 in particular. It's a good year for the CHL. It's a good year for Canadian prospects, period. And it's a bad year to not have a first-round pick, just getting a little myopic here and looking at what the Vancouver Canucks have done in this calendar year. It's going to be a good draft based on what I'm seeing now, and hopefully that holds for the remainder of the year.
Well, JD, what your professional responsibility just bought you was an invite back to the Winged-Wheel podcast closer to the next year's draft. So congratulations on roping yourself in. But truly, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a blast. I know the fans are thrilled to hear from you. Thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, welcome back. That was our interview with JD. Thank you so much, JD, for talking everything from Vancouver to the rest of the hockey world to prospects with us. Definitely someone we're going to have back as we talk more about this upcoming draft class of prospects. He handled that professionally, like I mentioned, which is a good change of pace considering our usual.
He's a much better speaker than us.
It makes sense that he does all of what he does now. So he covered Vancouver, so we're just going to skip ahead now to the San Jose Sharks in our own Pacific Division preview. San Jose did have an interesting offseason. They actually just named Logan Couture captain.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of years left on his contract. Makes sense, and he's the guy who always wakes them up in the playoffs.
They just brought back Joe Thornton at a 1-year, $2 million deal.
Fantastic.
He'll never retire. They retained Erik Karlsson on that $11.5 million deal. Again, the kind of deal where if you're going to be overpaying for a guy, at least it's a superstar, one of the best players in the league.
I'll fight anybody who disagrees.
Brent Burns,
which I have on Twitter numerous times.
Oh, yeah. Their decor starts with Carlson, Burns, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic, so it's never going to be a bad decor. They have the most insulting contract in the league in Kevin Labanc at a $1 million deal.
My favorite.
We don't want to talk about it, Brett. An interesting team that I think is going to be still very good. And if we're talking about that threshold of good that you have to be to contend for a cup, I think they are technically in that threshold. Do you agree or disagree?
Yes, but it's less likely than it was last year. Mind you, they got really close last year, but Joe Thornton's another year older, and they just lost, 35 goals with Joe Pavelski walking out the door?
Right, and Joe Pavelski leaving is the biggest thing there.
The one thing that JD, I don't think, mentioned when he was talking about the Sharks, how much does Brent Burns' production get hurt this year? Because as good as Brent Burns is, and I'm not trying to demean him as a player, but one of the reasons he gets as many points as he does is because he loves to shoot the puck. Anywhere, anytime, any angle, it doesn't matter. And because the Sharks had arguably the player who's the best puck deflector in the NHL in Joe Pavelski, Burns had a lot of assists come off goals that had no business going in the net because Pavelski just made the impossible redirect. Now, that might cost Burns probably only 5 to 10 points this year, but that's still 5 to 10 points, and that's 35 goals they're not getting. So it's not insignificant.
It's not just Pavelski. It's Pavelski, Jonas Donskoy, and Gustav Nyquist that they lost.
Yes, Donskoy and Nyquist. Well, they lost like 2 months of Gus Nyquist. But...
Right. Here's the thing about Brent Burns. He's never been a phenomenal defender, and that's no secret. He's a specialist in putting himself in favorable offensive situations, so I think he'll adapt. I think, like you said, they might have lost 25 goals worth of value or whatever it is, but he'll find a way to mitigate that so the impact won't be a 1-to-1 ratio, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it won't be a 1-to-1. He'll still be fine.
At least for the next few years, which is all they need. They're not worried about Brent Burns at the end of his contract. They're worried about trying to win a cup now.
Yeah, the basic question that comes down to the Sharks this year, if we're just going to oversimplify this, will the progression we see this year from Tomas Hertl and Timo Meier cancel out the loss of Pavelski and the aging of Burns, Karlsson, Thornton, and Vlasic.
Very well could, because Hertl and especially Timo Meier are no joke. Timo Meier was not brought up in terms of this like crazy RFA class, and he really should have been.
Yeah, and he was a 30-goal scorer, but then it comes to how many more does he have in him? I wouldn't bet it's much more than he just scored.
How old is Timo Meier?
23?
22.
22.
I bet he has more.
I wouldn't bet a ton more, though.
Again,
I still think they're going to be one of the top teams in the division. They're still going to be really good, but I liked them better last year, if that makes sense.
Of course, devil's advocate, and this isn't something that I necessarily believe in. Did they let Pavelski walk at the right time? Were they a year or even less away from his age curve starting to take a significant dip?
With the style of game he plays, yeah, it was the right time to walk away in the sense that what did he get, a 3-year contract?
3 years, $7 million, was it?
Yeah, it's not the best value in the world, but this season, he's still going to be really good.
He definitely will be. But that's the kind of tough decision you have to make. When you sign Erik Karlsson for 11.5, you're going to be letting guys go.
Yeah, and Doug Wilson is the master of rebuilding on the fly.
Of course.
So I have faith he knows what he's doing.
A team that I think people are forgetting that are still going to be really good is the next one on our list here is the Vegas Golden Knights. They added one of the best players in hockey on the planet in Mark Stone. And he's 27 years old, and they added him at a $9.5 million deal. When you talk about Mitch Marner getting nearly 11 and you have Mark Stone for 9.5 as a UFA, oh boy, that is a phenomenal contract. Stone does everything, and he does everything at an elite level. He is, for a team that was not lacking in best players, he's their best player, and that is absolutely excellent for them. It is a fantastic acquisition. They have the pedigree. They pretty much left the playoffs on a fluke, on a bad penalty call, and then a completely collapsed penalty kill.
Yeah, San Jose went to Game 6 of the conference final and objectively should not have got out of the first round against Vegas. It was a really bad penalty call followed by one really bad penalty kill, and that was Vegas' season.
They have an excellent roster full of players, and they also have a lot of good prospects, like Nick Hague, Zach Whitecloud, Jake Biscoff. A lot of guys can make that next step.
Cody Glass.
Those are just on defense. Forward, Cody Glass, Tomas Nosek, who is a Detroit player, Brandon Peary. Those are all guys who could step up into a bigger role now. This is a serious roster. Stone, Pacioretty, Stastny, William Karlsson, Riley Smith, and Jonathan Marchessault, and Alex Tuch as your top however many paid players. Those are all excellent guys to have on your team.
Defensive depth still concerns me a little bit, especially losing Colin Miller.
They lost Colin Miller, so they have Nate Schmidt, Shea Theodore, Braden McNabb as their top three. I don't think that's I think that's a good group. I don't know if it's
not great.
I don't know if it's a top end group, but okay, put that group with Toronto right now, and I think Toronto's a cup favorite.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
So what's the practical difference in goals on the ice between Vegas and Toronto is the question.
It's not a huge difference. I'm a big fan of Vegas's roster, the way it's constructed. Age might be a concern for some of these players, like Pacioretty and Stastny soon. I wouldn't bet this year, but you never know.
Yeah.
Pacioretty has had some down years recently, so. And they did lose Eric Hall to Carolina, although he missed all of last season with an injury, and they were still good, so I don't think that's the biggest loss in the world.
The Arizona Coyotes. Biggest story for them this offseason, acquiring Phil Kessel. There's been a lot that came out recently about Kessel's departure from Pittsburgh, which we'll talk more about in future episodes. But he wasn't traded because he was a bad player. Kessel has been one of the most consistently high-performing goal scorers in the league for the past, decade?
Yep.
That is huge for them. For a team that was lacking goals, having Phil Kessel as your best player is awesome. They acquired Nick Schmaltz. It was last year. Yeah. They made that trade. And they promptly signed him to a $5.85 million extension. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a fantastic number one defenseman to have. Nick Hjalmarsson is an excellent defender. They have Jacob Chikrin. They have Jason Demers. They have Alex Goligoski. Oh man, that's where Alex Goligoski is. Forgot about him. This is an interesting team.
You didn't even mention arguably their best player. Clayton Keller.
You think Clayton Keller is their best player?
Could be.
That's true. And they just extended Clayton Keller. $7.15 million contract extension.
That was a ballsy extension.
That is. They're essentially banking on Clayton Keller getting significantly better.
Because Clayton Keller last year wouldn't have even been in the top 3 in scoring on the Red Wings, which is horrifying. Top 2 or 3. But he led the Coyotes in scoring, which is also horrifying. If they get goals, they'll be good because they've got one of the best goaltending tandems in the league, really strong defense, and maybe the worst depth at forward in the league. So, and no top end other than Kessel and maybe Keller now.
They're not going to be winning the division, but I can see them sneaking into the playoffs.
If you ever want the argument of why what Toronto's doing is a good idea, Arizona's the argument for it because they don't have superstars up front, and that's why they missed the playoffs last year.
They suffer from injuries year over year. They need to figure that out. They need to stay away from losing guys to injuries for prolonged periods of time.
And too bad, Arizona. Barwis is ours.
The Anaheim Ducks.
I agree with JD here, and I think they're going to be sneaky good.
You think so?
I think so. Well, two reasons why. First being John, second being Gibson.
Right.
You could make an argument, again, like JD said, that I tend to agree with. He might be the best goalie in the NHL. Had it not been for some injury troubles in his young career thus far, we'd probably be making that argument right now.
The Anaheim Ducks are a factory of just churning out amazing goaltenders.
Yep.
And they have been, since J.S. Jaguar?
Yeah.
And that is nuts.
And Ryan Miller is the backup still there, which he's no slouch. He's not what he used to be, but it means when Gibson can't go or needs a night off, they're still going to be all right. Kessler's out for the year with injury. They don't have Corey Perry anymore. They might have Justin Falk soon. That's kind of sitting in limbo right now.
If they give up Andre Kasha,
it's
Justin
terrible.
Falk, that's awful.
It's awful. So they still have, hopefully Rickard Rakell stays healthy for the full season and doesn't screw my fantasy team in the last week again.
Right.
They still have Ryan Getzlaf. They still have Jakob Silverberg. They still have Hampus Lindholm. They still have Josh Manson.
Adam Henrique.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to be a good team. I'm not even saying they'll make the playoffs. But they're going to keep it interesting. They're better than they showed last year, if that's the way I want to put it. They're better than they showed.
They can be. And they did, they replaced their coach. Did they?
Yeah. They don't have Wendy anymore.
Dallas Eakins.
Yep.
That's who it is. And
who's done a phenomenal job with the Gulls, their AHL affiliate. Everybody's getting in better shape on that team now.
I was going to say, I was trying to figure out who he replaced, and Bob Murray kept coming to mind before I remembered that Bob Murray was GM coach.
Yep.
That's what it was.
Yep.
Okay. The Connor McDavids.
They will go exactly as far as Connor McDavid carries the Connor McDavids. Draisaitl will help, but they're the Connor McDavids.
They have James Neal, who I think isn't certainly done in his career. I think he could have a bounce back season.
Oh, I love that trade for Edmonton.
Oh, yeah. Nobody who is that talented of a goal scorer has such a precipitous drop and doesn't at least have a chance of coming back. But it's still, no matter which way you cut it, it's still better than having Lucic in his contract.
Yeah, exactly. James Neal could perform exactly as he did last year, and the trade is still a wash. Any improvement is fantastic.
They have to hope that Peter Chiarelli's signing of Mikko Koskinen doesn't completely screw them, because they have him for 3 more years at $4.5 per year.
But they have Mike Smith as the backup now.
It's bizarre. They just signed Riley Sheahan, which I thought was a good signing.
Yeah, that was a good value signing. They're a team that lacks depth, so all the Red Wings fans were going to laugh about Riley Sheahan can't score goals. Well, sadly for Edmonton, he's still an upgrade.
If they had to sign Leon Draisaitl this year, they'd be screwed. They have him for $8.5 million, and they're laughing now.
Yeah, because he had 100 points last year.
Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl as your number 1, 2 centers, or even if you want to put Draisaitl on McDavid's line, is phenomenal. Everything after that gets a little sketchy.
Hey,
Nuge is
I was going to say, don't you dare disrespect my boy
I love
Nuge.
But once you get to Nuge, he's not working with anything anymore.
Yeah, he might have James Neal this year. That might be something.
Like, if you have Connor McDavid and Zach Kassian is on his wing, you got to change something. Ken Holland has a lot of work cut out for him. A ton of work cut out here.
Their defense is at least respectable now, though, between Darnell Nurse, Oscar Klefbom, maybe Evan Bouchard gets a full-time look this year, and they have that power play quarterback they've been so desperately lacking. I shouldn't sell Klefbom short on that, but he's not elite at it. Bouchard might be. So, yeah, there's I'm not going to write Edmonton off like everybody else has because, again, the fact remains they have Connor McDavid, and they went to the second round of the playoffs with just as weak a roster. So some good luck with health this year. McDavid goes off. Neal even improves marginally. I think, again, not saying they will make the playoffs, but they have the potential to keep it interesting.
On the flip side, a team that almost definitely won't, the LA Kings.
Yeah, Speaking of old,
Drew Doughty is 29 and is signed for $11 million until the end of time. That was one of those back-paying contracts.
he's still good though. So
he's still one of the best defensemen in the league.
He is far from the problem on that team right now.
He had a poor year last year by his standards. Yeah, bizarre lineup. Like they have Kopitar and Dustin Brown and Jeff Carter. Those are the old guard. Tyler Toffoli, but Ilya Kovalchuk. What do you really have outside of that?
I'm a fan of Adrian Kempe. I mean, he's not a game breaker, but hey, you got to take the positives when you can get them.
Jack Campbell is turning out to be it looks like he's finally panning out as a possibly starting goaltender, which is good because they're going to need to replace Quick at some point.
Well, no, they don't, because Quick still has infinity years left on his contract.
4 more at 5.8.
That's a bad contract right now. But yeah, I think it's time you start giving Campbell the reins. Yeah, there's not a lot to love about this team. They're bad.
No, yeah,
they're real bad. Unless Kopitar and Doughty have again another Hart and Norris possible season, it's going to be a season of pain. But the thing is, it's Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar, so those things are possible. Not likely, but possible.
The Calgary Flames are for some reason obsessed with trading with their biggest rival, the Edmonton Oilers. Both literally in acquiring Milan Lucic in a move that makes sense for absolutely no one in my mind.
Makes sense for Edmonton.
Sorry, it makes sense for no one who could possibly be making that move if they're the GM of the Calgary Flames, which is bizarre because I really think Brad Treliving's a really good GM. They brought in Cam Talbot, former Edmonton goaltender. This is still going to be a good hockey team.
Hold on. My favorite offseason story, maybe in the NHL that didn't get nearly enough attention, is the Calgary Flames, as part of their offseason transactions, bought out Michael Stone. And then 3 months later, signed Michael Stone.
And they saved a ton of money on their cap hit, like $700,000 or $1.7 million, one of the two.
Yeah, because that made sense, especially considering he had 1 year left on the contract.
Well, they're pretty high up against the cap. I mean, they're going to be a good team. You have Johnny Gaudreau in at $6.75 million. That is an absolute steal. You know, Sean Monahan, Elias Lindholm, even Sam Bennett could have a good year. Mark Giordano's playing the best hockey of his career somehow at age 35. You have Noah Hannafin, TJ Brody, Travis Hamonic, and Oliver Shellington coming up through the ranks.
It's a good balanced roster.
Yeah.
And that's even once Matthew Tkachuk gets signed.
Right, which still needs to happen and probably will happen maybe soon. Braden Point and Matthew Tkachuk have to be laughing after that Marner deal, right?
Oh, yeah, they're the happiest
Rantanen.
people on the planet.
Braden Point has to be paid $12 million a year now. And they won't be able to afford it.
I'm not sold Points better than Marner, but
I would take Point over. I know we've done this a lot.
Yeah, but the big question in Calgary isn't how good their forwards are. They're pretty good. It isn't how good their defense is. It's pretty good. It's the fact that their goaltenders are David Rittich and Cam Talbot.
Yeah, it's not pretty good.
And David Rittich was good last year. Make no mistake. But how many times have we seen a goalie come in out of nowhere, have one really good year, and then fizzle out? We're looking at you, Jim Carrey. So that's a massive, massive risk in Calgary right now.
Cam Talbot, when he's on and is having one of those freaky, like this random goalie is going to be amazing this year, is fantastic. We've seen it before. You really have to bank on that happening because otherwise you're wasting a year of being able to hold this roster together. You're wasting a year of Mark Giordano being still an effective top-end defenseman, although he seems to be impervious to aging properly.
Yeah.
Someone moved his age curve down 10 years.
He's actually 25. We've just been reading it wrong.
Pretty much, yeah. Everyone's like, oh, okay, the 80s he was... Anyways.
Except he looks like he's 45, so...
Oh, it's the Italian in him.
Yeah. The Calgary Flames right now...
grizzled.
Yeah, that's the word. Right now, the Calgary Flames are my front runner for a February Jimmy Howard.
That is an excellent point. And that's a huge departure from last year where it was the Calgary Flames who were the front runner for February Jimmy Howard.
And then there'll be next year who they'll probably be the front runners for February Jonathan Bernier.
He still has 2 years left in his deal, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So next year.
Absolutely.
Next season.
Okay, let's do the dance. Underperforming team, dark horse team to overperform, and then we'll do our standings.
Underperforming team. I'm not going to stray very far from the conversation. I'm going to say the Calgary Flames because I think on paper their roster is one of the best in the league, but I cannot buy into that goaltending yet. Just yet. This will be one like a month or two into the season. I'll know if I'm right or wrong because if Riddick can put together a solid start, then all will be well in Flames land. But if he doesn't, the
dogs like that answer.
Yep.
Mine's going to be a cheap answer because we know this team's not going to be good, but based on how they spend and what their prerogative right now, I think Vancouver's going to come nowhere near the kind of success they should be having for the money that they spent on their players.
But they do have an Elias Pettersson.
They do have an Elias Pettersson, but how far can that carry you?
Far. Maybe to almost making the playoffs. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. They also have a Quinn Hughes and a Brock Besser.
And you know what? That's why I can see them having a year where they overperform, everything goes right for them, but they're not going to get the kind of results that warrants paying, Tyler Myers the money.
No. Yeah, they are very much going to be stuck in the murky middle.
A team that I think is going to succeed. I don't know, because I think everyone's going to fall in where they are. I think Vegas is going to have another phenomenal year. I think Vegas is going to win their division by a lot.
I have my answer.
Who's your answer?
Edmonton.
Edmonton.
For the same reasons I have problems with Calgary, I can't ever bet on a team with weak goaltending. I also can't fully bet against Connor McDavid.
No, but the guy can't play 30 minutes a night. I mean, he can, but
I think Koskinen and Smith is going to be not a great goaltending tandem, but steadier than what they got last year. I think the addition of a guy like Evan Bouchard on their power play is going to help because McDavid's not a power play specialist, and that's one huge area of improvement for them. Even though it's like minor moves, I do expect James Neal to have a bit of a bounce back year. I think Riley Sheahan is an upgrade at their offensive depth. And again, main reasons for this, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. This is not a good division. San Jose and Calgary are prime candidates for regression. I'm not saying they will. I'm not even betting that they will, but I'm just saying all the signs of teams that are good, but you can see taking a step back are there. If it's this year, if it's next year, if it's the year after, I don't know. But until Calgary gets some goaltending and San Jose finds some youth, the question mark will always be there. And again, I'm going to circle back to my main point here. Connor McDavid. Do I think Edmonton makes the playoffs? Again, like I've said all episode, no. But I think they're good enough to make it interesting because right now people have them penciled in for bottom 5 in the league. Almost everywhere I see, it's Edmonton and LA comfortably in the bottom 2 of this division, and I don't think Edmonton's in the same class as LA.
All right. Standings from the bottom up or from the top down. I'll go first. I think the worst is going to be LA. Vancouver fans won't like this, but I think...
Why do you make us go from the bottom up? I always think top down.
Oh, okay, let's do top down. Okay, I think it's going to go Vegas, San Jose, Calgary. I think Arizona is going to stay at 4th in the division. You guys have convinced me. I think Anaheim will be 5th. And Edmonton 6th, Vancouver 7th, LA 8th.
Okay. I also have Vegas winning the division.
Yep.
I'm a fan. I'm going to put enough faith in David Riddick to put Calgary 2nd.
Okay.
Very uncomfortably. I'm going to put, again, uncomfortably, going to put San Jose 3rd. Because now here's what it comes down to, and here's the real reason I have these 3 at the top. Not that I love Calgary or San Jose the way they're primed. I have zero faith in the rest of this division. Every other team I have massive question marks next to their name, and I think from this point all the way down to LA, it's a crapshoot. Like a real, true crapshoot.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go Edmonton 4, Anaheim 5, Arizona 6, Vancouver 7, LA 8.
Okay. Before we get to overtime, I actually want to read out a very special happy birthday, and that's a happy birthday to Lars Thorzel. Lars, you are an incredibly lucky man. Your wife Helen sent us a very sweet message wanting to wish you a happy birthday. From everything that she said, I was nearly sobbing by the end of it. It was so heartwarming. But from everything that she said, you have an extremely loving family over with you in Sweden, and we want to say thank you to them for putting up with our voices. Apparently they fall asleep to us quite a bit, which is more than what we bargained for when we know we're putting our voices out there. And thank you to you for all of your support. So have an excellent birthday from Helen, Elise, and Sigrid Thorzel, and of course us, Ryan, Brad, and even Evan, who's not here. So happy birthday, Lars. All right, we're going to get over to Patreon, where all of their comments get read out on air as our way of saying thank you for supporting the show. Brad, you saw my eyes do this. It's because we had 29 comments today.
Oh, my God.
Joe Falzone says, this facade of not naming Larkin captain is so tongue-in-cheek. I'll be convinced if he doesn't have it by Game 3. Who are your sleeper picks among both the high-end prospect and the depth guys to make the team?
For the Red Wings?
Yeah.
I feel like we answered this one. I'm trying to remember. I think the dark horse that actually has like a legitimate chance to make this team is Joe Hicketts.
Yeah?
Because he's not waiver eligible, so they might factor that in, and he's been there, done that. So yeah, that's my answer, because I think we all expect in some capacity Hirose, Zadina, Rasmussen, Svechnikov to have a shot.
Chase Pearson. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but I think he had a good prospect tournament. I can't really say what he did at camp, but he might see NHL games. I don't think he'll make the roster permanently, but he might see NHL
Oh, he'll
games.
see NHL games, yeah, because it's the Red Wings. There will be many injuries.
If you want a dark horse among high-end prospects, Veleno, I guess. Sure.
He's the only one.
Brendan B. Singer says, so I know I haven't posted here in a while, but I thought of the perfect comparison the other day and I need to share. The Leafs under Babcock equals Michigan under Harbaugh. Both have really good teams that appear to be underperforming because of having a powerhouse in their own division. Bruins equals Ohio State, which also works for fan comparisons. If Michigan was in the Big Ten West, they would almost surely have made it to the Big Ten championship game, and same with the Leafs getting out of the first round in the Metro. I now see how hilarious Michigan's struggling is from an outsider's perspective, but I have to sympathize with Leafs fans because I completely get the feeling. The interview with Steve is what had this prompt into my mind. Thoughts? As a Michigan fan, that makes me feel better.
That makes me feel sad.
Yeah, also that.
I don't like Harbaugh. I just want that on record. I'm sure he's a good dude, but as a coach, I don't like him.
Jonathan M. Schulman says, hey, boy, I love Harbaugh. He's cool.
It's because you eat chicken.
Yeah, I do.
You timid bird eating.
Jonathan M. Schulman says, hey, boys, I've listened to your podcast for a minute, so I thought I'd become a Patreon supporter. Here's a post about Stay Fresh cheese bags. Jonathan, thank you so much for your support. That means so much. All of you new patrons, and you guys have been coming in, thank you so much. What are your thoughts on the rule changes for the 2019-2020 season?
Oh my God, I forgot what they were.
Yeah,
the expanded video review. No.
Yeah, John, you opened up a can of worms.
I'm not going to expand. I'm just going to say no.
I actually forget what expansion of the coaches challenge, review of major match penalties.
Dumb.
There's more helmet rules. Oh, a player has to leave the ice in a reasonable manner if their helmet comes off.
Good. Smart.
Defensive team will not be permitted to make a line change when a goalie freezes the puck on any shot from outside the center red line.
True. Oh, one thing that I actually saw in action it was so cool to see at the Kitchener Rangers preseason game, picking the face off.
I love that.
That was cool. I like that. You could see the ref go up to just like whoever he figured the best player on the ice was. Where are we going? Be like, here.
If the goalpost is deliberately displaced by a goalkeeper during the course of a breakaway, the goal is automatically awarded. That should have been a rule already.
That was the I can't remember the goalie's name, but it's because of a very specific goalie.
Yes. And when the attacking team is responsible for the puck going out of play in the attacking zone, the face-off will be conducted at one of the two face-off dots in the attacking zone. I like that. Forces more offense.
Oh, so you're not going to get punished for the puck going over the glass?
Yes.
Because my beer league heart, my biggest pet peeve is if I ring one off the crossbar and it goes out of play. Like, come on, that was a good shot. Don't punish me for it.
Flatus Maximus says, howdy do dud buds. Everyone is obviously hyped for Veleno for good reason. Do you think he'll crack the lineup to open the season? If not, how long do you see him in Grand Rapids?
Until there's injuries.
I don't think he'll start, but I think he will make it up. Always a pleasure to listen and keep up the good work, boys.
If there are no injuries, he will get the Zadina treatment. He'll get his 9 games when they feel it appropriate.
Nathan Miller says, long time since I commented. I hope you're all good. Looking forward to fantasy hockey this year. Evan says, oh, Dana is a brand new patron. Welcome, Dana, and thank you so much for your support. Dana says, hey, this is only semi-Red Wings related, but have you guys discussed the fact that Atanas Illich, son of Mike and Illich Holdings executive, starred as the Driller Killer, the 80s horror classic Slumber Party Massacre?
Oh.
Yes. Liz Barbudo says, so what if the no captain thing is just a smokescreen and what they're actually going to do is announce Larkin as captain during the opening player intros? It's probably just wishful thinking on my part.
It better be.
Steve Yzerman is not one for the dramatics, but it's so good you have to kind of wish for it. Rowan says, good day, duds. Almost time to do the hockey, but the Rugby World Cup kicks off this week, so tune into that, obviously. Well done on getting to the 1,000 subscribers. Oh, yeah. We reached 1,000 YouTube subscribers. We were like edging so closer for so far, and then Rowan actually put out a tweet that said, all right, guys. He was making a bunch of jokes about unsubscribing just because it's Rowan. And he's like, all right, guys, game's over. Let's get him over 1,000. And he was messaging me. He's like, by the time Thursday Night Football is done, you guys are going to be over 1,000. And he was right. I woke up and we were like well over 1,000. So Rowan, thank you for putting us over the hill. And thank you all. Over 1,000 YouTube subscribers. A month ago, we had half that. Nothing is more affirming for us to dedicate inordinate amount of our lives to this podcast.
It still makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, that the camera's there?
Yeah, I have so many weird tics as we're going that I just don't think about because it's never mattered, and I forget that's there for 90% of the episode, and then I'll catch myself doing something stupid.
Yeah.
And I'll just like, oh, wait, no, right.
I had to tell Brad that we have to stop pressing our faces against our pop filters because A, the mics are picking it up, and B, we look ridiculous. And Brad was like, all we do is weird stuff. Can we... What? Video is a funny venture for us.
Yeah, like maybe one day we'll make it a shtick where we'll just do things in front of the camera and not call attention to it and see how people react.
Rowan continues to say, new goal, get Evan to 1,000 Twitter followers. That's right, mass unfollow. It's so easy.
Is he not there yet?
Go to his profile and smash that unfollow button. For too long, he has coasted by riding the coattails of Bad Take Brad and Crying Ryan. Together, we can achieve this goal. For every person that unfollows Evan, Ryan will slap Brad live on video. Do the right thing, people. That is confirmed. That is a deal.
I put my costume back on from earlier?
Absolutely, you can. So the prospect tournament was hashtag fun. Good to see hashtag German Lidstrom and hashtag must see JV. Clearly the best JV in Detroit since Verlander. Just be head and shoulders above the competition. Also very pleasing to see Zadina not waste any goals and save them for the actual season. No point in filling the net with pucks if there's only a small audience. Smart. Jersey time. Well. Adidas have managed to not heck up the last 3 jersey releases. I, for one, am shocked, but also extremely worried that if the Wings get a third, it will still be a big yikes. Rank the 3 just released. Jets, Flames, and Blues.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Okay, Flames are in the bottom.
Okay.
I that's the only one I can establish right away, and I love those jerseys, but they're number 3.
They're like 3 very good jerseys.
Like, objectively, the Jets is the best jersey.
Yes.
But the nostalgia of the Blues one, I don't. The 90s of it, Ryan.
Yes.
They did not.
They didn't take away they didn't try to clean any of it up. They said, frick it, we're going all out 90s bullshit.
I saw it on Reddit originally, and the top comment was just perfect. He's like, I love how they didn't tinker with this. It's just pure 90s bullshit.
That's what it is.
It's perfect.
Okay. I can't put those Jets jerseys anywhere other than number 1. The Blues now have one of the best uniform sets in the league because they're keeping their baby blue thirds, which is like, oh,
and they're wearing
chef's kiss.
They're wearing the 90s bullshit jerseys for 3 games, and one of them is against the Red Wings.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I can't not put them on. I live on this podcast, and Rowan knows this with almost every take I have on jerseys. My preference goes to pure 90s bullshit. I can't vote against it.
I have to go Jets, Blues, Flames. You go
Blues, Jets, Flames.
As always, this content is proudly brought to you by Stay Fresh Cheese Bags. When you need to keep all your goals fresh and clean for the regular season, store them in Stay Fresh cheese bags. Scorer's choice. Marissa, otherwise known as Give Larks the Sea on Twitter, just says no comment. So I wasn't too far off. Michael Barry says, hey guys, with NHL 20 being released, there's a new trade finder system. No one wanted Justin Abdelkader or Franz Nielsen's contracts alone. So here are the 2 deals I was able to get. Justin Abdelkader plus a Detroit second plus Washington second for the LA Kings for their 3rd and 5th round picks. By the way, offering the 2 seconds was the least I could give up to get an offer. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not. As much as I hate the Abdelkader contract, I'm not giving up 2 second-round picks in a rebuild.
Franz Nielsen and a 3rd for and San Jose's 3rd for Ottawa's 4th in 2020 and their 4th in 2021.
I'm closer on that one because I'm not married to 3rd and 4th round picks, but I probably still wouldn't.
Closer, but I wait to see if the Red Wings get any compliance buyouts.
Yeah, and the further you go down the rabbit hole with these contracts, the cheaper they become to offload. Again, the Red Wings have no expectations over the next 2 years. There's no reason to unload them.
Matthew Tangsrud says, "What's up, guys? Long time no comment. With all due respect to Rowan, Fournier, and the rest of their gang, I will not be partaking in either the Stay Fresh cheese bags, the Dud Duds, or the Helm is Elite comments. However, I am fully on board the hashtag German Lidstrom bandwagon. You guys are... This fan base has just evolved into a beast of its own with several heads. I was wondering if you saw the tweet prior to training camp by Dana... I'm going to butcher her name. Wakiji? I have to look up how to pronounce it.
I know she's not Hawaiian, but I like to go that way. G-E?
Dana W. And I have to ask her one day how to pronounce it. In which Sider said that he has every intention of playing in North America this season, either in Grand Rapids or Detroit. Want to hear your thoughts on this. My feeling is good on him for having this attitude, but it may not be realistic. That's pretty much where I landed. It's good for him to go for. I could also see that having an impact. I mean, if they wanted to send him back to Germany, but he really insisted on playing here, I could kind of see them honoring that.
I want him in Grand Rapids, honestly. If it weren't for the absolute glut of defensemen in the Red Wings system right now, where I don't know where they find a spot for him, they would certainly have to unload a couple defensemen, and that's not even up for debate. They just physically don't have enough roster spots. Someone has to go. I don't think they'd have to unload anyone of significance to get Sider in there, so I'm on board for it. So maybe recoup the pick they gave up for Adam Ernie by sending, I don't know who, Hickett's or someone to give Sider the spot. Because I want Sider playing top 4 minutes in Grand Rapids. I think that's the best course for his development. It's in the Red Wings system. They can give him adequate ice time. He learns North American ice. And again, more specifically, in the way the Red Wings want to play it. And they can be over his shoulder all year helping develop him. There's not going to be a literal ocean between them. And again, as much as we want to say it, the big ice, Europe to North America, it's a different game. It's not dramatically different, but it's different enough that it sways my decision if I were Steve Yzerman.
It goes on to say, also a bit annoyed by the lack of captain again this year, but all of Larkin's public comments have done nothing but solidify the fact that he will be captain someday. However, in the meantime, why not put the C on the chest of an all-time great and elite talent such as Helm? I thought you wouldn't be partaking in this. Ugh. Or at the very least, keep the C from getting stale and keep inside one of those Stay Fresh cheese bags. I've been bamboozled. Guaranteed to preserve the reverence for the bright beacon of hope and admiration known as the Red Wings. C, a Fournier company, later Dud Duds, Rowan, long distance high five. I've been had.
You've been had. It's a ruse.
Joseph Fournier says, hey fellas, congrats on 1K YouTube subscribers. Circling back to Cronwall's retirement, I don't believe he has the credentials to get into the Hall of Fame. You've lightly touched on this before. Would you reiterate your thoughts? Have they changed at all?
Okay. Cronwall to the Hall of Fame? No.
The Hall is weird, and sometimes people get in with Cronwall's level of pedigree.
Nobody has. Nobody.
I don't think he objectively reaches that bar.
If
they put him in, it would be a big surprise.
It's not the Hall of Very Good.
His numbers are not going to be in the rafters either.
No.
And that doesn't discount who he is, who he was to the Red Wings, but the Hall of Fame is a very high bar. I just don't see him getting in. It would be a big surprise. Although it wouldn't be like people would be talking about it to the end of time. People would be like, really? Cronwall over some of the other guys that aren't in yet?
Okay, let's put it this way. Let's just put it objectively. If you talk to 1,000 hockey fans who aren't Red Wings fans about Henrik Zetterberg going to the Hall of Fame, that vote's going to be far closer to 50-50 than you would like to think. So if Zetterberg's a fringe Hall of Famer, Cronwall doesn't have a chance.
I understand shielding Larkin from the gong show that will be the post-game press this year, but isn't there also value in giving him the C now in order to lead the rebuild and take the pressure off him later when they're supposed to be getting better? Yeah, that was Brad's point exactly, actually. Either Yzerman wants to wait a year to get a better feel for the team, or he's not convinced that Larkin is this guy. Sorry about all the cheese bags. I guess the joke isn't fresh anymore. Insert your own Marner contract cheese bag joke here. Stay fresh. Hey, man. I, as goofy as you guys are and as much as you're weird as hell, and that's coming from a very weird person, I love you and I don't want you guys to change at all.
We're here for it.
Yeah. Joseph Delia says, sup guys, just curious as to when you guys will kick back into 2 a week. Also, Mo Money Stacks Apple Cider Appreciation Post. Thanks for putting up with our weirdness. You guys let us know. We were planning on the first week of October. If you want it to happen sooner, I think we can start make that start happening sooner. You tweet at us and let us know.
Yep, and also we need to hammer the schedule because we've got a few guest possibilities.
Cody G says, a little over a year ago, I reviewed the Winged Wheel podcast on iTunes, which is huge for us, by the way. If you guys have the time, please give us a review there. And Ryan was kind enough to read it aloud for the rest of the class. I believe in that review, I offered a deal that if I became a patron, you guys had to begin releasing 2 episodes a week. I appreciate you doing that despite it taking me up until a few days ago to hold up my end of the bargain. Well, thank you, Cody. It's okay. It's no problem at all. Your support means the world to us, and I'm glad we can come to an agreement. Happy to finally support a podcast that's become such a fixture in my weekly routine. What are the chances you're able to ship merchandise to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia? Are you the one who's been listening from Mongolia? Every time I look at our stats, I'm like, who's listening in Mongolia?
I thought we've talked about him before.
Have we?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because I'm not, like, as I knew we had a Mongolian listener.
There's Mongolia, and there's also Vanuatu.
Where the hell is that?
It's an island.
Where?
Survivor filmed there once. I can't tell you where it is in the world. I want to say the South Pacific. I could be wrong. Anyways, also to help fill the void without 2 episodes a week, I've occasionally listened to old episodes. Recently listened to your 2015-2016 season preview for the Wings, and it was odd hearing so much optimism coming from you guys because I've only listened to the Winged Wheel podcast during the struggle.
They made the playoffs that year.
Hindsight changes everything, but it was interesting to hear you guys saying it was unlikely Larkin would make the team because the lineup was too stacked with talent like Datsuk, Zetterberg, as well as others finally coming up like Jacob Kindle. Yeah.
Well, Kindle did play. Not well, but he played.
Jethro E says, what's up, gents? Hockey questions here. I think without a doubt that the Marner contract is a huge overpayment in AAV. With these RFAs starting to play hardball and trying to get that cash money green or yellow or pink or whatever color it is for you buttes north of the border, all of those colors. What do you think that it's going to do for us with our negotiations for our high-end RFAs? Would you see a case where Mantha or Bertuzzi holds out for a ludicrous contract like what Marner got? No.
They could hold out, but they are not. Okay, I love all 3. They are not high-end.
No, they're not that. They're not elite tier.
If Mantha goes off for 90 points this year, which isn't out of the realm of possibility, but it's really stretching it, maybe. But even at that, it'll be 1 year of elite production. So I could see a reality where Mantha breaks 70 points this year and asks for a ton of money, but
yeah,
I don't think it would be so dramatic like how this summer's held up.
Also, the Leafs have $40 million tied up for the next several years on just 4 players, all forwards. That's not a lot to go around to getting high-end talent to fill out the rest of the roster. If they don't win the cup in these next 2 years and the cap doesn't increase like they hope it will, does this put Wonder Dubas in the same boat as his fellow 4-eyed GM compatriot Chiarelli? Oh God, no. I think it's more on Babcock.
Again, the Pittsburgh Penguins are the reason why Toronto doesn't have an excuse. They won a cup with Brian Dumoulin as their number 1 defenseman. Let's not forget the Leafs still have Morgan Riley.
Jacob Lozen said, or he finishes up by saying, I'll do the opposite of Brad and shut the hell up and listen. Jacob Lozen says, aloha, dubs, long time, no comment. I've been a bit nervous all summer. We're going to have an ice hockey game prior to our draft party this year in a league that has been going strong since 2012. Half of our league plays multiple times a week in a beer league, and the other half is like myself and has never played an organized game in their lives. Then I learned that the game is at 8 p.m., and the league members are all going to start drinking at noon. Personally, I don't partake in the drink, being 1 year sober. Hey, congrats, man. That's awesome. Now I feel I stand a chance at being MVP of my first ice hockey game. Oh, man, that prospect tournament, huh? Joe effin Veleno looked everything like a 2019-2020 player should. Let us see how his training camp goes. If Veleno doesn't land in Detroit, I will certainly be watching him, along with Mo Sider perhaps, in Grand Rapids on a weekly basis. I know we need to trust in our Lord and Savior Stevie Y and his ever-wise Iser plan, but I cannot feel that the Wings announcement about 4As again is a total kick in the nads. Am I alone in this world, or do you think this is all part of his Iser plan to lure us into a sense of false security, and then wham, Lark skates out on opening night with a C? As always, stay fresh, my dub cheese bags. Stay fresh cheese bags. Perfect for storing the Winged Wheels captaincy for yet another season. You guys are getting good at this.
I just realized something. It's not only possible, but almost likely the Grand Rapids Griffins top unit this year could be Zadina, Veleno, Rasmussen, Sider, and Cholowski.
That is not bad.
That's going to be stupid good.
Justin Klinsky,
which also might be the Red Wings top unit in like 4 years.
Justin Klinsky says, so I'm honestly ready for hashtag German Lidstrom to start this year in Grand Rapids, or that 5% chance he starts in Detroit. Rowan has mentioned the Rugby World Cup, go Roos, but what about the footy finals? We're 2 games away from the grand finals, and every team I've rooted for has lost. I'm still hoping for Geelong to win it all, so let's wait and see. Yeah, that's my thoughts too.
No. I think the opposite.
I honestly keep losing my thought process, so enjoy reading this, Ryan. Oh boy. Hashtag German Lidstrom, hashtag German Lidstrom, hashtag German Lidstrom, hashtag German Lidstrom, hashtag German Lidstrom. I, Ryan Hanna, have seceded from being a Detroit Lions fan. Instead of aligned myself with the Green Bay Packers. Oh, I threw up. Sorry, I couldn't. Oh, that made me nauseous. Whew, that was weird. I blacked out for a second. I can't remember a single thing that I said, so all of it's null and void. Justin Whitmer says, what's up, guys? Long-time listener here, but I've recently jumped onto your Patreon. Justin, thank you so much, man. As we move into the season that I've already written off, I'm going to try and keep up with a lot of the prospects here because I don't want to be blindsided at the draft again. And also, I'm thinking about going. Hey, if you go, let us know. We'll see you there. I think it'd be awesome if you guys could go through the prospect rankings once a month or so and talk about any guys that Detroit should target, even though it's confirmed that Lucas Raymond is going to be wearing the winged wheel come June.
Oh, yeah. Please, yes.
Clayton Van Dyken says, first off, thank you for reading my poetry last week, Ryan. Now, although the Red Wings attempted to illegitimize my Captain Larkin jersey, so graciously awarded to me by yourselves, I continue to have faith in the true captain, for no lettering can take away from the virtuous letter C Dylan Larkin wears on his heart. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed our dub Civil War talk in the Discord last night, as well as the image of Ryan shirtless with Red Wings nipple rings that you now can't get out of your heads.
I'm so happy I didn't go to the Discord yesterday.
Also, someone get Ryan a t-shirt so he's not sweating his Canadian ass off making videos. Yeah, I'm actually wearing the same sweater. I threw this sweater on for that video because it was the first thing that was handy, and I got an earful. Everyone was like, why are you wearing a sweater? It's still hot out. I was like, it's for 30 minutes. I was fine. It was very hot. I regretted wearing it. I regret wearing this now.
Is it sad that when he mentioned the true captain, the first name that came into my head was Crunch?
On a different note and completely unrelated news, my roommate found bed bugs in her bed, so that's neat. Oy.
I'd move.
The apartment complex is going to claim it's our fault somehow, naturally, despite the unit not even being ready for us upon move-in, and are charging us $600 to get it treated. Needless to say, we are very unhappy, so if anyone would like to donate to the cause, please send me all of the money. Finally, since the Titanic sinking was a giant hoax and insurance fraud scheme, what do you think happened to the actual ship? Oh, that's something.
Well, we all know what happened to the actual ship, and this is exactly why we're all raiding Area 51 next week.
That really fell off, eh? No one's talking about it anymore.
Did it?
Oh my God, you're right. Nick says, hey, duds, hope I'm not getting this comment in too late. I'm sure everyone has already asked all the relevant questions about Sider, Veleno, and Zadina. So let me take a step back from the here and now and ask about a guy who's more of a long-term project. Antti Tuomisto has 3 goals and 10 points through 7 Junior A SM Liga games. I know he's there because he wants to maintain his college eligibility and get a scholarship. At this point, though, it seems like maybe the Wings should have some words with the Red Wings East, a.k.a. Boston University, to try to get him over there this year. Either way, he's a long-term project, but do you think spending the season dominating in a league he's clearly too good for will negatively affect or at least stagnate his development?
With him specifically, no, because he still has some skills in his game that he needs to dramatically improve, notably his skating. So playing lower competition will allow him to, I don't know how to phrase this, air quotations, take nights off to improve on the weaknesses, and it won't negatively impact his team because he'll still be at notch above everybody else. Him going to junior is, you would expect him to dominate, so it's good that he is. I wouldn't have guessed to this level, and I doubt it holds up all year, but it's a fantastic development. But he was not drafted as a guy who's going to be anything for the Red Wings in the next 3 years. So his development path doesn't have to be good. So if he wants to spend another year in junior, refine the parts of his game that need to, and then go spend 2 years at BU or whatever college before jumping ship to Grand Rapids or Detroit, that's fine with me.
Russ Parsons says, I'm looking to create a Red Wings basement. What do you think is a must-have in it? My backsplash of the bar is going to be a 150-gallon octopus tank. Be careful with octopi. They are like extremely smart, and they can get out of anything. If you're serious.
That thing needs to be airtight.
A couple really good shadow box jerseys. I'm talking like signed Lidstrom Winter Classic.
Close.
Yeah. A signed Gordie Howe jersey, if you have someone to steal it from.
There you
go. White walls with a red stripe or some like barber pole striping. I think that's what we might do in the studio, by the way. Yeah, we're going to take suggestions for you guys for the studio.
If it's too much work, we're not doing it.
Don't do too much red. It's harsh on the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of jerseys. Yeah, Rowan said lots of jerseys. Joshua Bizura says, I'm Ryan Boobadooda Goo Goo Gaga. Freaking Clayton, look what you started, man. Now for my question, I really want to believe that it's actually at least one of Zadina or Veleno on the roster opening night, but as the season creeps closer, I'm starting to wake up more and more often in the middle of the night to the sounds of Blashill and his blender. He's also making a stupid face while doing it. What are your guys' thoughts on him? Look, I think either one of them have made a case to at least be on the roster opening night. I think Zadina should play most of the games in the NHL, most of his games in the NHL this year. I won't be surprised or offended if Veleno doesn't play more than 9 games in the NHL this year. All this is a question of how much Yzerman is going to give Blashill in terms of control, and how much Yzerman cares about the guys who are ahead of those players in terms of depth. So he's not obviously not going to sit the guys he just signed in Ernie or Filppula or anything like that.
Was it Max who did his roster projection of like the locks versus almost locks, etc.?
Sounds like Max.
Yeah, from what I remember, it basically came down to 2 spots. So there's 2 spots that are going to be available for Hiroshi, Rasmussen, Svechnikov, Zadina, and Veleno to fight over. 2 true open spots. Mind you got to throw N and De La Rose, I think, into that competition as well. So, to the victors go the spoils. Let's just see who has the best training camp and put them in there.
Don Mitchell says, been busy at training camp, got nothing, got to meet Max today. He gave me a few minutes of his time at camp, super appreciative. Now let's hope I win a ticket for the opener. Love to meet y'all one day. Cheers, boys, Don. It would be awesome to meet all of you at the meetup. By the way, October 6th at Founders Taproom, Detroit, just a hop, skipping away from Little Caesars Arena, is our annual Winged Wheel podcast meetup before the home opener, starting at 1 p.m. You guys can roll through. We'll have some beer. We'll have some food. We'll have prizes to give away, swag to give away. If you guys are really obsessed with having a Winged Wheel podcast sticker, I heard that's the place to get it. We want to blow the roof off of Founders. We want them to be so blown away by how many people we come through. I think the last time we had 50 to 75 people.
Yep.
We
had I think it was almost exactly 50.
I want to get past 100 this year.
Yeah.
So I want to see all of you.
I also just got confirmation that I will not be working the Monday following. So.
Oh, so jealous.
Oh, all bets are off now, boys.
I would love to take questions from Reddit or Twitter today, but that was a lengthy overtime, and we do have to wrap up.
This is almost a 2-hour episode
for the Pacific Division preview.
Woo!
I want to thank all of our listeners, all of our brand new patrons, all of our longtime patrons, our name level sponsors: Sky Carcass, Luke Johnson, Arjun Shankar, Don Mitchell, Clayton Van Dyken, Mike Reed, Langabeer, Matthew M. Rice, Sean Levine, Kaylin Wood, Charlie Elkins, John Evans, Rob Thiel, Stan Olson, Ryan Lewis, Mike DiLoretto, and Hannah Lee. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Daniel Lighting for our brand new lighting. Happy birthday to Lars Thorzel. We love you all. The home opener's coming. Oh boy, is it bright in here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.